I want you to take a look at how you would feel if you could start a program today that would be your last diet. Because that's actually a nickname for Ideal Protein, is your last diet. And we're going to go over the science behind why that's called that. But essentially, it started out of the work of Dr. Blackburn, who is a medical doctor in the 70s. He started researching ways that people could drop body fat, but spare muscle, and he wanted to do so quickly. So he was giving the body incomplete proteins, and he had incredible results with weight loss. Now, the problem is that it actually created deficiencies because people weren't getting nutritionally what they needed, and the proteins were not complete. And so a lot of people lost a lot of weight, but some people actually died. And that's not what you're looking for if you're looking to lose a few pounds. So 2 doctors took his research and his work, and here's a result. The first one was Dr. Atkins, and we all know what he did with it. But the other is Dr. Tran. And he's a medical doctor that took the work and he took it over to France, and he developed the program that was going to look at what was missing with Dr. Blackburn's research, and he completed it. So he put in complete proteins, and he looked at nutritionally what the body needed to lose weight and not create deficiencies. And that's where he developed Ideal Protein. So he developed this for athletes that were coming from their off season onto their on and wanted to shred body fat but spare their muscle. Because if you're an athlete, you want to keep as much muscle as you have. So from his work, he took that in France, and a few years back, he took it over to Canada. And then in 2008, the program went to the US, where it got FDA approval, which is actually pretty hard to do. Now, when it comes to the program, over 5 million people have been on the program worldwide. And a result, we have had thousands of people over this country that have lost weight, and it's a wonderful program. So what I want to talk about first is how the body stores fat. So why does this program help? Well, essentially, if you look at how the body stores fat, it comes down to sugar and carbs. Here's why. All carbohydrates become sugar. They get broken down as sugar. So for every 4 grams of something of a carb, it's the equivalent of 1 teaspoon of sugar. So what's a carb? You're right, so sugar, but even beans, starches, fruit, pasta, sweets, rice, peas, nuts, potato, beans, all of those are carbs. So they are all fat-making foods. So what we want to do on this program is help the body handle sugar properly. And here's what it does. It comes down to the pancreas. Now, the pancreas is located over on the left side of the body, and it's what's responsible for handling sugar in the body. So when you eat something that's sweet, that has sugar, or is treated like sugar in the body, so any kind of carb, the body will send out a little bit of what's called insulin, or a chemical messenger or hormone from the pancreas to help process that. Now, this chemical messenger, or that hormone insulin, if I say insulin, what's the first thing you think of? It's typically diabetes. And that's where a person has problems with handling sugar in their body. That's when the pancreas has become really burned out. So the pancreas itself, what it does is anytime you eat sugar, it's going to send out a little bit of insulin, and your body will either use that sugar that you've just eaten for energy, or if it's too much, it'll store it as fat. So here's how insulin works. It's going to regulate your blood sugar level. So anything that you eat that's sugar or stored like sugar, it's going to handle it. It takes sugar out of the blood. It stores the excess as fat. But here's the problem. If you're trying to lose weight, if you have any insulin in your system, it'll lock away fat from being used as an energy source. So if you have insulin at all in your system, you cannot tap into your body fat reserves. So if you just go on a low-calorie diet, and there's some carbs in your diet, it'll actually make it much more difficult to lose weight. And that's why losing weight under any kind of other program that's low-cal can be very frustrating. Now, when there's no sugar in the blood and the body fat is locked away, the body will call for more sugar. So think sugar cravings. And I want you to think about what it feels like right before like lunch, or if it's been a while since you've eaten last, and what that feels like. And typically you might be a little agitated, you might be pretty hungry, you might start craving certain things. Well, that's all because of this mechanism. Your body's trying to regulate your blood sugar. Now, here's the thing. Your pancreas is a pump. See, Dr. Wander doesn't think that this looks like a pump, but it actually is. So this pump...
It looks like a redneck backyard.
So this is a pump, and it's meant to talk about the pancreas because the pancreas itself is a pump. So anytime you eat sugar or any kind of carb, your body will pump out a little bit of insulin. Now, what happens to a pump over time? It typically gets burned out. And especially the way that we eat in this country where there's a lot of carbs, like think about the average thing that people are eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's a lot of carbs. So every time the pancreas has to send out insulin, it gets to the point where it can't send out enough. So it'll actually send out a substandard quality of insulin, which then your body will just store as body fat. And that's a problem. And it's a big reason why we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because the pancreas gets worn out. Now, I want you to think back to a time where you could probably eat anything and you weren't gaining weight. When was that? And I think the most common response is when you're a kid. So typically you can eat just about whatever you want, but there usually is a time where you start gaining weight despite whatever you're eating. And it really comes down to the pancreas. So here's the thing. Let's talk about how the pancreas works in a naturally thin person. If you go more than 6 hours, typically without food, and when do you typically do that? It's usually at night when you're sleeping. Your body will tap into body fat. And that's how it works in a naturally thin person. So whatever they eat, their pancreas will handle, and they won't typically store that away. But let's say they have a big meal and it's too much for them at that point, and they do store some away. When they're sleeping or when they need to, their body will just tap into that body fat and pull it right back out. And it's how their body maintains that natural thinness. So I want to talk about next how we get energy. And it comes down to 3 storage tanks. Dr. Wonder's not a big fan of this picture either, but it's meant to be an energy tank. There are 3 energy tanks when it comes to the body. The first one is food. So when you're looking for energy, the first thing that you call for is eating something. And when it comes down to it, your body has a 3-day supply of food stored in your muscles. And it's actually stored sugar, and it's in the form of what's called glycogen. So it's in the muscles, it's in the liver, and whenever you don't eat, your body will typically tap into that stored sugar first. It's the first energy tank of the body. The second one is your muscles and your organs. So if you haven't eaten and you tap into that sugar that's stored away, your body will tap into your muscles and your organs next. So when somebody says that they haven't eaten all day, you can actually say that's not true, because they're taking some of their heart or some of their liver or some of their muscles in order to get energy. It's the second energy tank of the body. Now guess what the last thing that your body will turn to get energy? What's the last thing it'll tap into? And that's right, it's body fat. So body fat is the very last thing. So if we're trying to get into body fat, we actually need to get through that stored 3-day supply, which in some cases is even 4. And then we need to protect the muscles so you spare your muscles and you don't break that down. And then we need to efficiently burn body fat. So how do you do that? Well, we're going to try to get the metabolism so that you're just burning body fat. And what we need to do is protect the muscles, get rid of the sugar, and really use energy as the main source of fuel. So the solution here is an unbalanced diet that's going to help you lose fat, give the body an ideal amount of protein to maintain muscle, rest and reset the pancreas, and cut down carbs. And that's to help rest the pancreas so it can do what it needs to after it's working properly. Now let's talk about sensitivities. So, a lot of people...
I like this picture.
A lot of people can be walking around and they can have hidden sensitivities in their diet and they have no idea. And this can play into weight. So if somebody's sensitive to stuff, typically they'll crave it, or they may not even feel so hot, or their energy's low, and they have no idea this is even going on. So what we have in our office is a blood test where you can find out what your hidden sensitivities are, and we can actually tailor the program to help you even faster.
And, how do you know if you're insensitive? Well, we're not talking about allergies. We're talking about you're insensitive to a food. So what are some of the symptoms of being insensitive? Well, like you eat some food and then like right after, or even like the next day, you're just like, man, I don't feel so hot. You feel bloated. You have a lot of gas, you're tired, you're fatigued, and you just kind of didn't know what it was, but you didn't have any hives, you didn't get rushed to the hospital, there was no anaphylaxis, you were just not feeling so hot. So what would happen if on Ideal Protein we told you can eat broccoli, that's a food, yep, you can eat broccoli, but you're insensitive to it. How do you think the program is going to work? So what a lot of programs miss, and even Ideal Protein actually could possibly miss, is if you don't test people for their insensitivity to not only foods, but chemicals, dyes, environmental things, their body is not going to be able to work as good as it could work, and therefore the program is not going to work as good as it could. And as of right now, we've helped thousands of people lose weight, and we are I'm proud to say, at a 100% success ratio of people who are doing the program and losing weight.
Exactly. So let's talk about principles behind the protocol. So what Ideal Protein is going to do, it's going to help teach your body to live off of body fat. It's going to safely deplete that stored sugar in the muscles, or the glycogen, and that's usually a 3 to 4 day supply. So your body's going to start using fat as the major source of energy. So for the first 3 to 4 days as you're getting sugar out of your muscles, how do you think you might feel? And typically, so think about times that you maybe your blood sugar was off or you haven't eaten in a while, you might have that agitation or not feeling so hot. Well, there's ways to help this, but the main purpose is to help get that glycogen down so that we can burn body fat. And then one of the other principles is to transform the body's ability to digest sugar and properly handle insulin. So a major principle behind this protocol is to rest and reset the pancreas. Now, Ideal Protein handles all of these 4 factors that you see. So it handles the calorie factor, it handles the fat factor. It's actually not an acidic protocol. So unlike Atkins, which is high protein and it creates acidity in the body, this is actually an alkaline diet. It's also low carb. So it handles this without having to think about it at all. You just have to follow the program. Now in itself, it's on the low calorie side, but here's why it's not a low calorie diet. If your body is into burning fat, like you've handled that stored sugar, you're protecting your muscles with an ideal amount of protein, and I don't mean excessive protein, this is not a high protein diet, but you're giving it the proper amount of protein to protect your muscles. Where are you going if you don't have enough calories in your diet for energy and to run your body? That's right, you're going to go into your body fat. So if you give it a certain amount, but you're into fat burning, your body will pull whatever it needs out of your body fat reserves in order to handle itself and lose weight. Weight is basically a sign or a symptom that your body's getting back on track.